Hi, this is Sue for Parkies and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. So the title for this podcast is When Are We Old or Elderly? Is it a number? So I've had quite a few conversations with my husband about whether we are old or not, or we're not middle-aged. I think we're kind of somewhere in the middle between old and middle-aged perhaps. But it got me to thinking, is there a number that, officially, like when you're a teenager, you're first considered a teenager at 13. So my youngest granddaughter has just turned 12. So sometimes we refer to people like her as tweenagers or tweens, but they're not teenagers till they reach that number of 13. When you're growing into adulthood, in a lot of cultures, and traditionally, you were considered an adult at 21. So that's another milestone. So 21 and 13. But I'm not sure about the rest of the journey for us and how we label our age, if you like. So yeah, I'm just wondering, when are you old? And my husband, when I talk to him, he is now 66 and he's still very active and goes for long walks and all that sort of thing. So he's 66. And he said he will start to feel that he's old when he turns 70. Now that doesn't sound too far away for either of us because I'm 64. But he said, yep, he reckons that is a number that we all go, oh, that sounds old. I'm old now. Now we have some really lovely neighbours, and the guy, half of the equation, he is he's turned 70, I think, last year, and he goes out and mows lawns and does all sorts of odd jobbing, and he's physically active and fit, and I wouldn't consider him old, and yet he's 70. So I think, you're only as old as you feel, I suppose, is the saying. But it's hard to put a sort of number on it, I think. I think you start to feel old and be old when you stop doing things that are active. When people tell you, oh, you shouldn't be doing that at your age, which I'm sure goes down very well not. So, yeah, I think it's about how much life there is in your life, how much energy you've got, how much you're still doing, how much you have to let go, perhaps. I'm looking at a trip overseas with my husband next year, and I asked my niece for some ideas of what to do in Dubai, because we're thinking of going through Emirates rather than Singapore Airlines for a change. So she suggested camel riding, and I thought, not sure that's a goer. For one thing, I would never get on the back of a horse. They're bad enough. They're unpredictable. You're high off the ground. They don't have any brakes, and they have a mind of their own. That's horses. Camels, probably even more so. And you're sitting on top of a thing that's got this whacking great hump, and, it doesn't look like it walks smoothly, shall I say. It certainly wouldn't make me feel very safe being on this sort of hard ride, jostled about on this animal that I have no trust in, and maybe not a lot in their handlers who might think it funny to see an old lady hear off into the distance on the back of a camel. But yeah, I said, thanks for the thought, honey. Yeah, good thought. Sounds like fun. But I doubt whether my husband would let me even contemplate the mere thought of going on a camel. He would just laugh in my face. And yeah, he'd be right, because I am at an age and a stage, because of my Parkinson's, because of my back, because of my arthritis, and, all the other bits and bobs that are wrong with me. I have to be careful. And so that is a sign of age to me. Not necessarily that I'm old, but I'm getting older, and there are things in my body that aren't behaving terrifically well, and I have to nurture them. I have to be careful of them. I have to consider what is wise or unwise for me to do. I do notice a change in attitude of many people around me when I'm out and about. When I'm going through a door and there's people in front of me, I'm sure they're much more likely to hold it open for me and defer to me and say, you go ahead, when they see this white-haired lady coming towards them, maybe with a bit of a limp if my knee's not behaving itself. And yeah, they might open doors for me. One time, quite a while ago, I went and got some groceries, and it was a couple of years back now, I think, And I got my trolley to the car, and some guy scurried up to me and says, "Can I put those in the boot for you?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, okay, thanks, that's great." And when he walked off, I sort of thought, do I look like a fragile old lady that needs her groceries lifted out into her boot? So maybe to him I did, and it could have been when I was still a bit limpy from my knee op, or still a bit limpy from my back op. I can't remember what it was. I'm a bit limpy from many, many things over the years. But yeah, so he helped this little old lady with her shopping. So yeah, there are things that I have to consider. I remember when we went to Queenstown with my husband's mum when she was visiting from England, and we went on the luge. Now, she was in her mid-70s, and, she'd give anything a go. She was amazing. And so there was myself, my husband, his sister, his nephew, and I think it was his nephew. Yeah, it was his nephew. And, of course, my mother-in-law. So we all went up the gondola in Queenstown, and we're sitting there having a bit of a break before we decided what to do. And the mother-in-law, her name was Pat. So Pat said, what is everybody going to do? And my husband and I said, well, we're going to go on the luge. And my sister-in-law didn't want to go, but my nephew did. And she said, can I come on the luge? And we all looked at each other a bit dubiously. And we said, well, it could be a bit tricky. It goes really fast, etc. And so we came up with a plan. So she really wanted to join in the fun. So we got her a ticket and we took her up the top, and it was actually a beautiful thing to see. My husband and my nephew were on either side of her. Basically, she had an escort all the way down. She was in the middle on her sort of cart thing, and they were behind and in front of her, making sure she couldn't go very fast but could still have a bit of fun. So it was lovely to see. So here was this white-haired old lady who had her white bowling coat on, and all this, not a flash of white, just this gentle, moderate pace of white, escorted between two lovely gentlemen down to the bottom of the luge. And it was lovely to see. The boys did a grand job, but I was coming a little bit behind them purposefully to give them some space. And as I neared the point where the carts end and you have to get out, the scene before me was hilarious. My mother-in-law, Pat, was sort of cast in the cart, and one leg over one side, one leg over the other. The boys both trying to heave her out of her position at ground level, and all of them laughing so much that they weren't really achieving a lot, and it looked absolutely hilarious. And they were just laughing, and everybody around was laughing, but eventually they managed to haul her out of the cart. And then we had to walk up the stairs, and we went into the cafe and had a coffee together. And so we were talking about what we've been doing that morning and how much fun the luge was. And the next thing, this white-haired, I'm not going to say old lady, this white-haired lady pipes up, "Oh, that was fun, I really enjoyed that. Can I do the fast one next?" And we all, in unison, went, "No." Oh, I perished the thought. But yeah, she was a bit of a game one, she was. And you could see when she was coming down the luge, people sort of pointing at her and admiring her, I think. Not laughing at her, just admiring her for doing that at her age. And she was a little white-haired older lady. So yeah, maybe if I was to do that, I might get the same treatment. But no, going down on what is almost a tea tray on a luge with not much protection and lots of bumps and corners and potential to fall off, I don't think this body is going to go luging again in any kind of hurry. So I think there comes a time in everybody's life, and I think I'm there, where there are things that you'd like to do that sound like fun, that you might have tried in the past, but you have to kind of admit to yourself that the boat has sailed. Now, a few years ago, maybe 8 or so years ago, I had said to my husband, I would love to get kayaks. I always loved playing around in kayaks when I was growing up, and we used to regularly go as a family and with my friends in Rotorua to a place called Hamarana Springs, and you could rent kayaks and muck about in them for ages, and it was such good fun. And so, yeah, say about 8 years ago, so I was a little bit older than when I was a teenager, just a tad. And so I said to my husband, I'd love to get some kayaks. We could have some fun sort of pootling around in kayaks. And we semi-looked into it, not that seriously, and it didn't happen. And so that boat, as it were, has sailed, because I would really struggle to get into a kayak safely. If I fell out, I probably wouldn't be able to get back in. And sort of sitting in one position like that for any period of time would probably cause me to have a very sore back. So yeah, that boat, that kayak has sailed, I'm afraid. So I won't be doing that again. So I think the key is to find activities that keep you active but have not no risk, because that's almost nothing. Maybe minimal to moderate amount of risk that you can ameliorate by being sensible. I can go for some walks with my husband, but I'm not going to go in a bit of bush where I have to clamber over logs or any of that sort of thing, because that would not be a good risk. So a little bit of off-roading, sort of walking along the side of a river or a canal or something like that. Maybe a little bit of walking through forests and things in the UK if they're reasonably easy tracks. I'm sure I can manage to do some, but climbing mountains, no, never been able to do it before, and I certainly can't do that now. So yeah, it's about kind of being honest with yourself, I suppose. In a lot of ways, I just feel like me. I don't feel like I'm 64. My husband and I often say, how did we get so old? It doesn't compute that I'm 64. Or he'll say it doesn't compute that I'm 66. And, it's hard to grasp sometimes. And my husband will say things like, he said the other day, I don't think we could go for those long walks in the Port Hills anymore, like we used to. And I said, when we used to, we were probably 20 years younger. And he goes, yeah, you've got a point there. So I think you can kind of want to do these things, wish that you were able to do these things, but you also have to have a bit of a reality check that, these things, maybe they're not so wise to even think of. I mean, everybody can have their dreams and their fantasies about what they could and couldn't do, but to actually think about, like my niece suggested, riding a camel, no, that's a no-go. Riding a horse, that's a no-go. Paddling around in a kayak, that's a no-go. Luge, not on your life. I am wondering, though, when I turn 70, whether I could jump out of a plane again. Okay, this has been Sue for Parkies and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. I hope you join me for the ride. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.